process as we face our budget shortfall. And we are sharing this information early for engagement and advocacy. Due to rising costs, limited funding, and declining enrollment, we are facing a $40 million reduction. Now, through this process, we remain committed to students and staff, and we're going to protect as many essential services as we can. We're going to look to minimize impacts to our staff, and we're going to make every effort to protect programs and services that directly impact our students. Now, early, ahead of where we typically are with the budgeting process, is because we know the importance of input, and we want to engage our community, our staff, our families into this process so that they can provide as much feedback as possible. This is really about a call to action. We need a long-term plan to secure sustainable funding needs of our students. This is a time for unity and partnership. It's foundational work for Portland. And so while we are gathered, I have my leadership team, I have members of the board. We are available to answer any questions that you may have for us regarding our budget and the unfortunate shortfall that we're facing at this moment.
I guess at this point, how many positions are projected to be cut or lay off?
That's our first proposed amount. Like I said, we're hoping to engage community and staff in a robust feedback process, and we are continuing to identify cost-saving measures over the next several weeks. So we anticipate being on this journey for the next couple of months, but we wanted to get out early and quickly our first draft of proposed reductions.
And when you're hearing from parents and concerns from parents and community members, what are the specific areas they don't want to see cuts in?
Well, I think our families and our staff are aligned with us, right? They want to see impacts to students in classrooms minimized as much as possible. You know, anytime that we're talking about reducing a full-time person or even a part-time person, any human, it is a tough conversation. But due to our current state, it's a necessary conversation in many spaces. But we are aligned with minimizing impacts to schools as much as possible.
So which departments specifically have you focused on? Is there a specific department that will get cut the most?
Yeah, that is a great question. I will say over the last 3 years, most of the reductions have been at the central office level. And while we know that we have folks who work in administration or at the central office, that thing we can do to keep reductions the furthest away from classrooms specifically is the work that we need to do. And so we're looking at about 12 million reduced out of central office, whether it be personnel or reducing budgets for travel, for professional learning, and some other things that we have outlined. Yeah, I appreciate the question on the partnerships and the reductions that way. We remain committed to having conversations and being in this engagement process with our labor partners. Professional learning days are critically important. It's the way that we support our educators and making sure that they have everything that they need to move instruction for our students. And while it is not ideal, it is a large investment that we need to look at. But we don't plan to do anything that would be against the current contract without being in partnership or in agreement with our labor partners. So one of the reasons why we list that out early is so that we can have engagement around some of our proposed reductions. Yeah, so it's actually a grouping of our staff members who aren't directly in classrooms teaching. Our biggest bets are on our professional learning model and the work that we're doing to engage our staff and support our students. And so that is through the interventionist, work of the interventionist, that is through the work of instructional coaching. I actually have my chief academic officer, and that's Christina Howard.
Hi, so to answer your question, the reduction that's proposed right now is a 30% reduction. And so that's not all of those staff members, and so we would be able to maintain some of them. And again, this is a draft list because we actually want feedback on this in particular and understand whether or not how folks feel about that, and then make decisions from there.
And how will you guys decide which schools or which of those positions are outside of that 30%?
Yeah, I think that's going to be further in the conversations around the feedback that we get, and then we would make decisions accordingly. They could also be partial allocations. Maintaining right now, we have one at every site, so maybe they're partial. So we can run a few different scenarios, again, based on the feedback that we're getting.
Before you step away, can you say and spell your name, please?
Yes, Christina Howard, Kristina, Howard, HOWARD.
I actually might have a question that would be relevant to the academic officer as well. Sorry. I'm just kind of curious. I see there's a cut made to like multilingual learners. I know that's one of the. I know you guys cited declining enrollment as a reason for budget shortfall. I know that's one of the few student groups in Oregon that is kind of on the rise right now. So I'm kind of curious if you could explain that decision a little bit. What is that department going to look like with 7 positions cut? Just curious.
Again, we're seeking out feedback, and we can't disclose the department because that might expose personnel. So it's a higher level articulation, and then we're going to get feedback from there to make that decision.
Can you tell us a little bit more about the kindergarten days at classrooms of 20 or more?
Yes.
So, okay.
Yes. The plan is to make sure that we have kindergarten assistants in classrooms at Title I schools with 20 or more students. Right now, we have kindergarten assistants in all of our classrooms in Title I schools, regardless of the number.
So if it's 19 or under, there wouldn't be any.
All of this will be finalized.
Yeah, so there is a budget timeline. There are a series of things that will go before the board in about April or May. And we also know at the state level, our budget won't be finalized until I think maybe more like the latter part of June. And so it's an ongoing process, a conversation that we'll continue to have over the next couple of months.
Can you tell us a little bit more about it, since you brought up the state? I'm just wondering what early signals you feel like on there's $1.3 billion proposal. Do you think they're going to go above and beyond?
Yes.
It's a crystal ball.
Right. Well, our hope is that they go above and beyond. I will say we are very thankful to the governor for raising the current service level in her proposed budget, and we're hopeful that we'll continue to see movement. I will say that every move matters. Every opportunity we have to address what has created some of our budget woes. Staff, Deborah Kafori, to speak a little bit more about advocacy efforts that we're doing at the state level.
Thank you. Deborah Kafori, Chief of Staff. Julia, as you mentioned, we have been working very closely with the superintendent is going to be doing a series of visits in person in Salem to talk about our efforts. We also know that Portland parents of the school district and our board members, but actually parents and students who will also be advocating in Salem for the resources that we need. And as Dr. Armstrong said, we are looking at the current service level, obviously, and raising that as much as possible. We would like the quality education model fully funded. That is definitely our goal. But we also know that there are other areas that need assistance, raising the special ed cap, a lot of areas in specific around special ed that money could be added to that would greatly impact our budget and impact the students that we have. So there's a lot of areas for growth. We have heard the legislators talk about their budget woes as well. We get it, but we think that there is nothing that is as fundamental to the success of our city and our state than our children and our school district. KAFOURY.
I just want to pick up on something that Chief Kafori has said, and I appreciate her words. You know, a couple of months ago, I went on a ride-along with Officer Klein, the downtown branch of the Portland Police Bureau, because I wanted to see firsthand the impacts of our city and some of the crisis that we have in front of us, especially as an urban city. And I understand that there are many of our partners who are looking at their budgets and needing to make some decisions. Understanding the state of our city, we believe in education that we have the first opportunity to begin to address the crisis that many urban cities see across states, across the nation, right? We want to be able to address mental health. We have to wrap our arms around our kiddos who are presenting with more need. It's no longer just about showing up in the classroom, teaching, and then going home. Our wraparound services are absolutely foundational to not only lifting the work that we need to do in our public schools, but also impacting our city on the prevention side before getting to the intervention. So while we recognize that there are significant budget concerns across our state, across multiple agencies, we stand in partnership. You know, I've said many times, it's not just about Portland Public Schools. It's going to take every single one of us to define our city, to get to a place where our state thrives and that our schools are high quality and offering the services that we need to support our learners.
Dr. Last year, I know that you were not the superintendent at the time, but last year, of course, there was a lot of criticism around the transparency of the budget process and some of the specific cuts around special education, bilingual supports, and just the general sense of we're supposed to be doing as much, if not more, with less, right? Yeah. And I'm curious how, I know that this is a draft, I know this is a proposal. I also know you're doing this earlier on in the process, and I'm assuming that's an attempt to kind of address some of those transparency concerns. Can you talk about your approach under your first budget and how you want to hit on some of those key concerns?
Yeah, absolutely. I appreciate the question. So with this first budget, as you all probably know, in school districts, the budget process with the school board really picks up in about late March, early April, and we are wanting to be ahead in our draft proposal of recommendations so that we can get as much input as we can. There are many areas where we need to continue to make sure that our schools are receiving the supports that they need. We do not have adequate resources to be able to do all the things that we want to do for our students with IEPs who are served under special education. If we were able to do all the things that we want to do, and let me just be clear that this isn't just a wish list or that we're handing out or holding out a bucket saying, give us more funds. We will take all of your money and we'll figure out what to do with it. We know what needs to be done to advance our learners, and we don't have enough resources. And we want to continue to advocate so that we have the funds needed to not only support our students in the classroom, but the staff that are in charge of moving their education forward. So yes, we are diving in. We're diving in early. This is the start of the engagement process. We will have some live webinars. We'll have a question and answer feedback town hall with educators. We'll have an engagement session. We will continue on so that when we get this information in front of the school board, they will have information for the community through this process.
I also want to ask about how the budget shortfalls or the projected shortfalls will impact modernization efforts throughout school buildings all across the school district.
Yeah, I appreciate the question. We still fund critical repairs and needs to our building. I think it's no secret that we have referred a bond, $1.83 billion, so that we can continue to move on the plan and making sure that all of our high schools are modernized and that we're able to address concerns that we heard loud and clear during the strike about rats, mold, heat, and cold. We want the ability to warm our buildings and cool our buildings at the appropriate times. And so it's not a conversation that's just about making sure that we modernize the high schools. The conversation is also about how can we improve as many elementary and middle schools that we can within an 8-year window. How might we move forward on our deferred maintenance that continues to be about $1 billion. You all have heard me say this since interview day, and I will continue to say that our investments as a large landowner in Portland, that our buildings must be appropriate. It's a working condition to not have buildings to be what it is that they need to be. And a working condition impacts student learning conditions. And we need those conditions to be improved, and we need them to be improved quickly.
Are there any projects being put on the back burner because of the budget shortfalls?
No, not at this time. We are confident that the funds that we have allocated to improve our schools continue to be in place. And of course, bond dollars, and I know we spend a lot of time out in community helping to distinguish between bonds and levies and general budget. We're not able to spend bond dollars on staffing in schools and classrooms, buildings, or other investments that are capitalized. And so we are hopeful that we'll have the opportunity to continue to modernize our schools and address some of the deficits and the repairs that are needed. We have many buildings that are over 100. Heard from families about some of the critical needs, and we want to be responsive in addressing those needs.
And the bond hasn't officially passed yet. That's going to be voted on in May?
Right, so we've referred the bond, the board referred the bond in January, and that vote will be in May. Yes, thank you.
I have a question for the board members at the podium, picking up on Dr. Armstrong's point about equity and social justice partnerships, which is, I know, something that both of the board members at the board fought for in June to put $1.8 million of proposed reductions back into the budget. I'm just wondering if you can.
And I absolutely invite them to the podium, and I just want to emphasize that we are at the proposal state, and our hope is to engage individuals in this process. And so there will be proposed formally, but certainly if they have other statements they want to say.
Thank you. Herman Green, Herman-Grene. At this stage of the game, I don't believe that there's anything that should be off the table. Nothing. When it comes to our kids, when it comes to making sure that we can do what's best for them, I believe that now is the time for everyone to take a long, hard look at where the dollars are at and see where we need to look at all of it. I don't want to see programs that are serving our diverse communities impacted. And I don't want to see teachers get cut. And I don't want to see the staff members get cut. And I don't want to see anybody in the building office get cut. And I don't want to see any of these things. But the reality is, we ain't got it. The money is not there. And until we can do something about the real issue, which is making sure that we have the funding that we need to support our schools and support our kids, we're going to continue to have these types of problems. No one wants these problems, and yet with a budget that is coming up short every single year, you're going to continue to have issues. Our buildings are going to continue to fall down until we get enough money to fix them. You heard her say we got over $1 billion in deferred maintenance that needs to be done. And yet we're only going after a bond that's 1.8 here, all the issues. We have to look at everything. There's no space. There should be no conversation that should be off the table. There should be no department that should be off the table. When it comes to thinking about serving our kids, serving our schools, serving our students, everyone should be prepared to, where can I come up, what can I see it? And at the same time, I don't even want to be having this conversation. So if we all get to come together and we can get all of our community to rise up, because I know that my community doesn't want to have this conversation. I know that the staff doesn't want to have this conversation. So I think this is the time for us to rally together. This is the clarion cry to say, listen, if we want to change this, then let's all come together. Let's all get on the same page. Let's all go down to Salem where the difference can be made and say, we need more. What you're giving us is not enough. We need more. I know that it's going to hurt. And every district in the department, every organization, with the police department, the mayor's department, I don't care who it is. To me, it doesn't matter across the board. Everybody should be looking to say, maybe I can shave $200 million. Maybe I can shave $200 million. Maybe I can shave $200 million, because it's about the kids. And we need to do that across the board, because there's nothing more important than our kids. We say that we want to transform tomorrow. Let's put our money where our mouth is, and let's do something to transform tomorrow. Otherwise, we need to stop saying we care about kids.
I know this is the first budget in a couple of budgets at least where school-based cuts have exceeded the central administration cuts, and I was just hoping you could explain, why that is and how that decision was kind of made.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, when you have the size budget that we have, and we are one of in the city of Portland, that means that we carry a lot of staff in our budget. And I understand that that is a top question, right? What is it, teachers to administrator ratio, those who are in the classroom versus those who support the classroom. And all I can say is that we started this engagement process so that we can hear feedback. And we are continuing to focus on keeping reductions furthest from the classroom. I do have my Chief Financial Officer here who just started with us, and we're so excited to have her in the position. And I'm going to ask her to just come forward and share a little bit more.
Thank you, Dr. Armstrong. Michelle Morrison, M-I-C-H-E-L-L-E, M-O-R-R-I-S-O-N. On the heels of that question, though, we are in the third year of reductions here, and the interest in this is because we are impacting schools at this time. So we have done a lot without impacting schools. So.
I think maybe this is a question for Dr. Adams, but there's 15 or so cuts in here that are due to enrollment declines. And I wonder if you can talk a little bit about that and give us your sense of what the district might be doing to sort of stand.
Sure. Renard Adams, R-E-N-A-R-D, A-D-A-M-S, Chief Equity and Accountability Officer for the district. Unfortunately, we just recently received our updated projections from the Population Resource Center at Portland State University, and Portland Public Schools enrollment is predicted to, not yet. We'll get them there as soon as we can. So I'm giving you some hot off the presses information. And our enrollment for next year is projected to decline by a little over 900 students. And so what the team does in recommendations and scenarios is we take our proposed staffing model and run our projected enrollment by school through that model and in the past. So that's what you see in the proposal right now are enrollment-related reductions that don't have to do with any increases to class size. We're not touching class size at the elementary level or at the middle school level and things like that.
So this might be for you or it might be for Dr. Armstrong. Understand that the rest of this year you guys are going to be busy with budget and bond. That's a lot. I'm just wondering, Dr. Armstrong, where you see or whether you see the need for a conversation redrawing and or potentially school closures given this continued enrollment decline and budget situation. Do you have a timeline?
Yeah, that's a great question. I would say on enrollment and balancing. It's a conversation too in the spring, as Dr. Adams mentioned. The information is hot off the press, and so we need to dig into that. Understanding that there's a decline that's expected over the next 14 years, but that also deals with current state. Listen, I believe in Portland Public Schools and what we have to offer. I believe in the city of Portland and that we can be this thriving space that continues to attract families and businesses so that we can see positive trends in our enrollment. Now, I'm not saying that our enrollment is just due to flight from Portland. We know that there are some things related to births as well and some other data that's used to make those calculations. But I stand in the belief that we're going to do everything we can to get our students back, in the belief that they will actually, families will be pursuing Portland Public Schools as the best option, the first choice for their students. And so while we can stewards of the funds that we receive and the work that our community has entrusted to us. And so we will engage in conversations looking at enrollment data across our city and finding ways to optimize all of our learning spaces. What I can say about this reduction, and as I said before, this $40 million deficit is critical. What we won't compromise is how we show up and support our students and our staff in our buildings. It is absolutely important that we're still able to deliver essential services. And this may mean over the next couple of years, we need to think differently about those service models, but we need everything in our power to be able to raise the achievement that we need. And when I say everything, I'm talking about adequately funding our state at our schools at the quality education model that was set some years ago.
Speaking on enrollment, how does the percentage of enrollment reduction course cuts, like how are those percentages aligned?
Thank you for that question. It really varies by level of school. If you were to look at our core staffing and program guide, it outlines, for example, our elementary class sizes, our middle school staff to student ratio, our high school staff to student ratio. And so as I mentioned when Julia asked her question, we run our projected enrollment by school through that model. And that tells us, hey, at the high school level, it looks like you need one less FTE. At the elementary level, it looks like that might be 8. I'm making these numbers up. I know it's overall 15, but I might not have them exactly without my paper in front of me. But that's how we determine that. And because of declining enrollment, especially at our early grades in elementary, that enrollment adjustment isn't as large as it otherwise would have been. Thank you.
Could you speak to how the strike is impacting, if at all, this draft budget and what the role of the unions has been?
Yeah. Well, I will say that I have appreciated our partners, our labor partners across all of the associations. We have started early, and often we have conversations about the supports and what's needed. I understand that part of the rising costs are labor costs, and we need to continue to be competitive to attract staff to serve in Portland Public Schools. And so while I would not say that the $40 million is a direct relation to the rising costs of contracts, what I can tell you is that we believe in our staff. We believe in the conversations that we are having about what needs to happen to be able to not only hire and retain high quality staff in Portland Public Schools, and we're going to continue to lean into that conversation. All across the land, right, there's rising costs for personnel. Majority of our budget is funding humans, and so with that naturally comes some requirements that are needed with the rising costs. And I just want to emphasize that the cost of supporting today's learner is vastly different than supporting learners, let's say, 2-3 years ago. So it's investments that we continue to make and will continue to make.
Just for clarification, though, is any part of this deficit, and if so, how much, a direct result of the contract that came out of the strike?
Yeah, I don't have the exact numbers. I would say that, well, absolutely, because it's the rising costs with personnel. I would say, though, probably more significantly that we haven't talked about yet today are PERS, which is the employee retirement system, and the impact of that rising cost. We had about a $32 million shortfall in that. So even with the rising of the current service level, which directly impacted Portland Public Schools by about $20 million, it was offset by the rising costs in PERS. And so we think of where we were in a better situation than we had previously thought when we got the PERS number in November. we realized that we needed to continue along the lines of making reductions of about 40 million. And let me just break that down just to be clear. So I think many of you know last year the team came together and made a recommendation and completed $30 million in reductions. And they were very clear that then the next year needed to be about 40 because there was about a $70 million budget shortfall for the upcoming biennium. And so 30 last year, 40 this year. The raise in the current service level number was actually 20 million, so that many of the positions that you see listed would have been saved until we got our PERS number in late November and saw that our deficit was about 32 million. So not only did we need to pull from a reserves account to address part of the PERS, we didn't have enough to address the 32 million. So that $20 million increase that would have benefited our budget greatly actually went to PERS. So I know that many think, oh, well, the current service level was increased, so that means that you're able to continue some of the service that you've had in place. No, that's not because of that PERS increase.
To put a face operation of the classroom, you have to make that switch.
Yeah, well, simply it means that we have to take those funds that we had hoped would be able to continue some essential services and place it into the PERS account so that we can address that shortfall. And we are more alike many of our districts, the other districts across the state in that.
Dr. Armstrong, you outlined 228 fewer humans. Historically, though, there's a certain amount of attrition and retirements, correct?
Yes.
Do you have a sense of whether attrition, retirements will cover most of that, or whether PPS will actually be looking at layoffs come June, given what you know about historical trends?
Yeah, so absolutely. My early feedback and information from Human Resources is that we will be able to address most of those numbers where we are letting teachers go. But again, that's early information. I think through this engagement process, we're going to continue to lean in with community. And we want people to show up and share their concerns or thoughts about what's on the list. Our questions are simple. If not that, then what? What are the trade-offs?
Is it possible that some might be switched from full-time to part-time again, or things like that that we saw this past spring?
Some positions, or
Yes.
tell me.
There were plenty of roles in the district where individual employees who were full-time historically were made part-time or were then part-time at multiple schools.
Yeah.
They technically weren't laid off, but there was a significant reduction in their position. Would that be possible?
Yeah, and that was definitely a significant impact to schools. Our early data tells us that through attrition, our staff members will land in spaces. It may not be in redoing our model, or maybe there were humans who were supporting teachers across multiple classrooms. They themselves might find themselves in the classroom. But again, it's early in the process, and we are wanting to be as transparent as possible and engage our staff and community into a conversation where we receive feedback and that they are tooled and ready to advocate at the state level.
All right, well, thank you very much for coming today. Obviously, this is the beginning of a conversation. We will be having many, many more of them with you throughout this budget process. Folks are going to stay around a little bit more if you have a question.
Any final questions? Yeah, absolutely. Any final questions? We wanted to make sure all questions were answered. Thank you for that, Chief Kafori. All right. Thank you for being here. Thank you.
Great work, team. Great work, team.